Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support our show, go to patreon.com/laststandmedia. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to Sacred Symbols Plus, a PlayStation podcast supplement. This is episode number 193. My name is Colin Moriarty. I'm joined as always by Chris Raygun and Dustin Furman. Boys, welcome. Hope you're both doing very well today. Mm-hmm. Chris, you're wearing like a black hat today. Yeah. Whole coterie of hats you have over there.
I've got a lot of hats.
Yeah.
I got a whole like a theater department full of hats.
Yes.
Whoa.
Very well said. It seems that way. And Dustin, I'm sorry to interrupt you today. I know you're with your parents. Well, you're at your house, but they're with you.
Yeah, it's no big deal. I don't think we're actually. I didn't know what they like will like go and leave and hang out with somebody and then come back, and so I never know what they're doing. So it's not a big deal. I think we're getting dinner later tonight, but yeah, I was happy to get together to talk about this little surprise announcement.
I before we get into it, I have to say that it's there's a tornado watch in my neighborhood right now. I don't.
Oh my God.
I literally don't know what's going on, but there's another one. It just says in the bottom of my screen, tornado.
On your Windows screen?
Yeah. You know how they have that little module where it says
like
it says cloudy and breaking news and all that? It just says tornado. And when you click on
it just says cloudy.
Yeah, cloudy.
Because we live in a habitable fucking part of the country.
You don't live in Venus on Venus.
Dude, tornadoes as a premise are so insane to me. Like the fact that people are like, oh hey, just by the way, in case you weren't aware, sometimes the air will take your life away. And it's like, it's fine, yeah.
I find them kind of. I've always been fascinated by hurricanes back in the day because people didn't really know they were coming until they were there. And so they were there. If you read about like historical hurricanes, they just destroy people and you never know. And now you can kind of see them coming and they still do enormous damage. My family's beach house in New Jersey was destroyed by, what was that, Hurricane Sandy, I think? In 2011. Mm-hmm. So we reaped the whirlwind literally with that. But tornadoes are scarier because they kind of just pop up. You know,
you can't really predict those.
Right, exactly. Like you don't have time to prepare, and they're way more destructive. So, generally speaking,
anyway, they're ominous too. They have a shape, like you can see them approaching. It's like it's like a colossus.
It is
meandering towards you. It's scary.
Did you ever have to do tornado drills in school?
No, we didn't get them all.
Really? You didn't get? Oh, dude, you have to go in the hallway and like put a book over your head. And it's like, yeah,
that'll do it.
That'll do it. That'll keep me safe.
Yeah, we never. Long Island's not. There was apparently a few tornadoes recently on Long Island because the weather's getting hotter, but that wasn't something that we really experienced. And of course, the middle of the country thinks that this kind of shit is a joke because they're always Tornado Alley, as it is sometimes known.
Sometimes they'll use a tornado just to get to where they're going quicker.
Indeed. Well, boys, I wanted to bring you to postscript. I have here in my hand. I'm like Neville Chamberlain coming off the plane from seeing the Nazis. I have in my hand here 5 tickets to see Downton Abbey: A New Era on Sunday. Just wanted to let you guys know. I'm very happy and excited about that.
Wait, hold on a sec. Hold on. Yeah. You printed them out like physical paper.
Yeah, I don't like dealing with the wallet. You know, like the Apple Wallet.
Oh, okay. But usually you can just pull them up on email. Like you can just boop.
Yeah, but in my experience, unless you're on airplane mode, I've had sketchy internet with Fandango and those other apps where like you're like kind of like waiting for it to come up and it's like a thing and it's like this is just like here. I literally just like here you go, and then I literally throw it in the garbage.
Why don't you just screenshot it?
Oh yeah, I guess I could do that because it is a QR code.
I have that same thing where I get scared that like I know what's gonna happen. I'm gonna get to the thing and then I'm gonna have like no internet for no reason, so I'm gonna screenshot it and it works. Typically,
I've had that issue. I've done that actually with the TSA in the past as well. When you like take a screenshot of the Alaska app because you don't get internet or whatever. Yeah, so I'm scared. That's the only reason I do that. It's because I'm scared. So I'm looking forward to being the only straight man in that theater.
Colin Moriarty, 2022. I'm scared.
And under 60.
And under 60, yes. Oh my God, that'd be so good. All right, guys, I pulled you in today to talk about State of Play. So they announced today from when we're recording this, it'll go live the next day. They wrote a brief PlayStation blog post that says State of Play next Thursday brings new game reveals, sneak peeks, and updates. And it says tune in live at 3 p.m. Pacific time for nearly 30 minutes of trailers and announcements. There's nothing to work on except for this. In fact, I find that there's like an italicized warning that is longer than what they actually have to say. And it says it's been more than 2 months since our last State of Play. Who's ready for a new one? Tune in live next Thursday, June 2nd, for nearly 30 minutes of announcements and updates from the world of PlayStation. We'll have some exciting reveals from our third-party partners, plus a sneak peek at several games in development for PlayStation VR2. And then they tell you where to watch. Now, the italicized warning says, and I guess it's reasonable. It says, please note that this broadcast may include copyrighted content like licensed music that PlayStation does not control. And it warns you if you're doing any broadcast or VOD to be careful of that. So we have this very little thing though to think about. It seems like it's third-party announcements, maybe a couple of them, and PSVR 2. So a little bit of an interesting hodgepodge here. Seems like they're clearing the way for something more first and second party driven, but perhaps not. So I wanted to get us together and just see what we think is going to happen. I don't think this has to go exceptionally long. We gave you a 4-hour and 25-minute episode this week, so
yeah,
leave me alone. Dustin, I want to go with you first.
Sure.
State of Play announcement. We were eager about it. We were wondering. There's been these rumors percolating of a bigger event. I think that this means that event is not happening at the time that we thought it might be. I would find that strange because that would mean they would say something twice in a week, which is possible, but I don't know that that's going to happen. So it's not really the stuff we want the most, I don't think. And it's going to be the hardest for us to guess. So I think that's what's going to be fun about this podcast. This brief podcast we do is just, I don't really feel like there's any bounds to what they could be talking about. So I'm curious, Dustin, talk to me about how you feel about the State of Play and what we might see.
I have I have a few predictions, but I think we should acknowledge the elephant in the room with this event, and that is God of War. We still do not have a release date, and they usually do set their parameters of what to expect, but they aren't hard and fast rules. Like, they have snuck in other things first party related when they say they're not, when they don't highlight that specifically. And so I'm wondering if we're thinking about the context of, okay, this is a State of Play. It's not a showcase. They're very clear about their terminology and kind of what to expect. But at the same time, I was thinking about this and I'm like, man, if there is a showcase as well, maybe for later in the summer, maybe even as late as September, is this the time where they do just give us a release date for God of War and then we get a more focused State of Play later on? So I have other stuff too, but I wanted to see what you guys thought. Is God of War addressed during this event?
I don't think so. I feel like I understand what you're saying because I'm trying to think. It was like there was one where it was supposed to be all third party, and then they had something. I think it was actually when they announced Returnal's DLC. It was in if I remember correctly, it was in a State of Play that was third party focused, and that was the only thing that they had talked about from first party. I could be wrong about that, but I feel like that's true. But no, I don't think so. Because I feel like they try to be as explicit as possible, though there could be like a surprise. We'll have some exciting reveals from our third-party partners, plus a sneak peek at several games in development for PlayStation VR2. I just feel like if they had more to say, wouldn't they indicate that? But it could be a surprise. So my gut says no. I feel like that all has to come on its own. I think God of War is just too big to just throw that away, unless it's like the beginning or the stinger, which could be interesting. Anyway, I don't know. What do you think, Chris? Do you think that God of War will be there per Dustin's thoughts?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like it probably should, just because I don't know how much time there is really left to.
That's my point.
Yeah, like, because I really do feel like this is coming like mid-September. Like, it would be my guess. I don't think September 30th is when it's coming out necessarily, because again, we talked about how weird that date was. But I do think it's mid-September. I think it might be a little bit earlier than that. Maybe like whatever the Friday is in the middle. Is when it's coming out. And at this point, you're thinking like May, you're going to be stepping into June, July, August. That's like 2.5 months. So like, you got to say something super soon. And this might be their only avenue to talk about it. Not show much for it, by the way, because I feel like we've actually seen enough of it. we've seen a decent chunk of gameplay. We know generally what to expect, at least from a aesthetic perspective. There's not really much need to sell us on the story because the whole game is based on story. We're already in if we're interested at all. So I feel like it makes sense to just sort of get out of the way. It's like, hey, here's the release date, and maybe like a little teaser for story stuff. But yeah, my thing is I just don't know how much time they have to really give people heads up, because I feel confident that it's September, or at the very least early October.
It could be September 30th, which was the date that was on that merch, and that is a Friday.
Which would be really annoying if it was September 30th.
Yeah.
Personally.
I think the key thing, and the only reason I bring that up is like what Chris said, is that it's just, I'm really curious about the dynamics of the timing and the announcement around this. But, there's a very big but, overall, PlayStation fans should keep their expectations low for State of Play. I feel like this is like this is like the repeated cycle of State of Play, is that Sony tries to set the expectations properly, and then there's morons like me that go on a podcast. I'm like, is God of War going to be there? So I wanted to be clear about why I was bringing that up, even though I think that overall expectations for State of Play should be very low. But with that being said, them putting an emphasis on VR is very interesting to me. It tells me that we really can expect this device early next year. I think if they're ready to start talking software, then definitely, March. Yeah. I think March, you're right, Chris, is the absolute perfect time to do it. The question, of course, is what software are we going to see? And that's kind of the main things that I focused on here and the stuff I wrote up, which a lot of this is what we discussed literally yesterday on Sacred Symbols, and out now at the time of recording, and yesterday for if you're listening to this show. But I feel like the locks, like if we're going to lock in some software, Resident Evil 8, I feel like is one of the most obvious to have a VR mode, just because of the sheer popularity of Resident Evil 7's VR mode and how it was so intrinsically tied to the original PSVR. I feel like that makes sense. The only thing is that it may have lost some of its luster, since a lot of people have already played Resident Evil 8, but so many people had such a fantastic experience with a Resident Evil VR game that I think that makes total sense. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing is GT7 right now, is that I feel like that makes sense that they have a VR mode ready to go. They did for GT Sport, and a lot of their work, I don't want to say a lot of their work is already done, but they did build GT7 off of the GT Sport engine. And so they already had a VR mode in that. So why wouldn't it be ready for launch, other than if they just wanted to pace out some of these releases? I think that would be an excellent showpiece for just like, man, the graphics on GT7 are so good in HDR, and I honestly wonder, like, man, that might be like super crazy intense. I didn't play any real racing games in VR, I think, for the regular PSVR, but I'm very intrigued by this now as I've started to dip my feet into the GT7 well.
Some interesting thoughts there, indeed. I'll let Chris go before I go any further. What are you thinking, Chris, about any of this?
I think we're going to see some weird stuff. I think if it's going to be truly PSVR focused, my first thought was, maybe this is when they'll take the opportunity to talk about Boneworks, because I feel like it's too early to talk about Half-Life Alyx. I feel like that's something that you want to keep for like a little bit later. It's like a surprise. But I would say that as far as Resident Evil goes, I don't think you're going to see Resident Evil 8 quite yet, but I do think Resident Evil 4 VR is probably going to come to the... I think, because that's already a fully fleshed out... That is a fully fleshed out VR thing. I know there's like probably like rights situations there, but like I feel like Sony has the money to like negotiate for that.
Is that kind of like, to me, when I'm thinking about like the crazy new hardware for PSVR, is that kind of like a deflated balloon, since it's like, hey, here's this PS2 game in VR.
I don't think so.
We're showing our lineup of games.
I don't think so, because I mean, you think about a lot of the VR games that exist already. I mean, like we're thinking Boneworks. I mean, Boneworks has been out for a while. Beat Saber is going to be a staple, obviously, and that's ancient.
Yeah.
We talked about Grand Theft Auto. What is it? Was it San Andreas that was getting VR support and stuff like that? And people were talking about it.
Yeah.
So, like, I think there's something about VR that makes old new again in a way that doesn't necessarily happen with just a standalone, like, oh, hey, it's a remake of a PS2 game. And Resident Evil 4 VR is awesome.
Yeah,
it's like a really, really good VR game, to the point where, like, if that's already done for you, it makes sense to kind of go after that if you already have an established relationship with Resident Evil as an IP. And my main reason for not necessarily being super on board with Resident Evil 8 just yet is because I'm not sure the VR mode is ready for that. I feel like they have to retool a lot more than they might anticipate because they didn't design it initially with that in mind. I'm sure there's like certain things that they probably kept open where it's like, hey, we might port this to VR later, but that work still needs to be done. And we know that they're working on standalone, well, not standalone, but like more content for Resident Evil 8. I mean, they've been pretty transparent as saying as much. So I feel like they're more likely focused on that. And then maybe once all that is done, or maybe later on, we'll get some kind of VR mode, or maybe we'll get both of these things, which would be sick.
But, yeah, definitely.
That would be like a huge draw, I think. Like if horror fans had that much content on PSVR to look forward to, I think that'd be really, really wise. But my gut says Resident Evil 4, for some reason, is there because it's just it's a really good VR game. It's like a really damn good. It's definitely like one of the best, without a doubt.
I like what you said, Chris, about Alex being too soon, because I agree. Only because I do think that game will be on PSVR2 probably at launch. I feel like that's like, I feel like Sony at least had to have tried to make that happen. And why wouldn't Valve do it at some point? Like you had noted on the regular show, they really have nothing to lose at this point, but they do have something to lose, which is maybe some dangling sales in between now and then on Steam that they just don't want to show their cards. If I were them, I'd just say like, yeah, have like Alex is coming the week before PSVR launches, or something to really placate your own audience and try to get as much money out of your own product as you can before you put it elsewhere. But other than that, I generally agree. And I don't really presume to speak much about what's going on with VR because I don't know. Dustin, to your point, and I think you're both in agreement that Resident Evil 8, I feel like that is almost obvious. And yeah, it's late. It couldn't have happened day and date, but I think that's okay because to Chris's point, I feel like Resident Evil is still going to continue. And of course, Reverse is going to be out as well. I mean, that could be a VR, shooter. Who the hell knows what they're going to do? But I am feeling pessimistic about any first party or second party stuff at all from anything. Because I feel like they would want to. I feel like they understand the difference for for any hardcore audience that's listening or watching State of Play. I feel like they know that that audience knows the difference, and they want that. So you might want to just get everything else out of the way, which might be what this is all about. I mean, who really knows? One thing I will say is that I feel like, and this is a prediction from me, is that I feel like Square Enix will be there. And while I feel like the recent Nintendo Directs have shown over the last couple of years or even a few years have shown that you can't really guess what Square Enix is going to do. They really are just full of random shit that usually is kept for that stuff. I would have never guessed ActRaiser was going to come back. I would have never guessed Dragon Quest 3 was going to get remade or Front Mission was going to come back and all these kinds of things. I don't think they're going to do anything like that on our side, though. What I think they're going to do is they're going to have a Final Fantasy game. Now, there are 3 options. 3. Final Fantasy. Actually, there are really 4. But let's talk about the core 3. 16, 7-2, or 9 Remake. And I'm going to say that they might have something to say about Final Fantasy IX Remake here. I feel like there was the anime stuff happening with Final Fantasy IX that's been happening in the background. I don't know much about that. And they promised an announcement. It might have already happened about what they're doing with that. And we talked about that on the show months ago when they revealed that they were doing a Final Fantasy IX animated feature. But the NVIDIA leak is real, obviously. So Final Fantasy IX Remake is obviously a thing. And at some point, you're going to have to show it off. part of me feels like it would have been unwise, or would be unwise from a strategic point of view, for them to have had anything to do with a remake of another game until they got all of the 7 remakes out. However, I feel like that's going to take so long, and that's such a different kind of remake in which they really have redone the entire game and reimagined it all, that I think Final Fantasy IX Remake will be something more along the lines of what presumably Aspyr is doing and Saber is doing with KOTOR, where I think they're just building the game from the ground floor again. Something like Bluepoint might do. And so could that be seen here? The fourth option that I said that was kind of an outside option, which I would love to see, but I assume we will see at a Nintendo event, unfortunately, is Final Fantasy Tactics. So, Dustin, how do you feel about Square Enix? And do you think that they'll be there? They seem to be the ones with the most to show for us, because we know they're so deep in bed with Sony. 16, Forspoken, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they're in bed with Nintendo with a lot of more independent level stuff. That I feel like them being their third-party partner, I feel like that's pretty safe.
I think that you are correct in that it is safe that Square Enix will be there, but I'm sticking to earlier where I'm keeping the absolute lowest expectations, and I think that it will probably be Forspoken that will be there again, because anytime Sony has one of these second-party marketing type deals, like, for example, Deathloop, we saw it over and over and over at every state of play. And I feel like Forspoken is the game that's still going to get that treatment as we get closer to launch. I just don't know. With those other games, are they too big to be at a 30-minute state of play? Like, would you want to save those for a showcase instead, where they would have a lot more gravitas?
I don't know. I don't know, only because it's like, where are the showcases? I just don't understand where they're gonna. What is going on? I don't know. I mean, how the hell do I know? I have no idea.
Something I think that is important to think about is Sony, ever since they left E3, really cares about carving out their own space and time to own the news cycle. They don't want to be a part of everyone else's news cycle. They want to completely dominate it. So, they're doing this the week before our fake summer E3, with Jeff Keighley's event and the Xbox thing. So they're kind of getting a little bit of their own time with this smaller event, but that's why I'm wondering if it's going to be not too far off still that we'll see this kind of bigger showcase, whether it's July, August, September, sometime in that window. I would think sooner rather than later, though. If they have some games that they want to get out this year, it's time to announce them for sure.
The other game, I'm assuming that there's going to be like 2 or 3 bigger games here. The other game that I was thinking of that I feel like the publisher of the game has been conspicuously silent about is The Division Heartland. And perhaps Ubisoft, well, let me back up and say, with Sony's interest in games as a service, we went over the numbers in granular detail on Sacred Symbols. We went over the fact that 25% of their revenue is now coming from games as a service. And that might raise to 50%. 50% of their future investment will be in those types of games. Certainly, this is something their partners know. Ubisoft is closely partnered with Sony on many things, including bringing Ubisoft Plus to PlayStation Plus, which is a thing that's happening. So would that constellation of stars coming together in such a way indicate that Red Storm developed free-to-play Division game could be ready to pop? I mean, now's the time to release it. Ubisoft's been kind of doing weird things with some of their games. I don't know if you saw the Roller Champions, they just shit that game out a few weeks ago. I don't know if you saw that. They just literally pooped it out. Didn't say a goddamn word about it. So I don't know if they're just not confident in it or whatever the case might be. I think it's also only a PS4 game. So I don't think it's like a next gen game. But I'm wondering if you, and Chris, let's go to you with this one. How do you feel about the idea of Ubisoft showing up with The Division or something else? I feel like Ubisoft's partnership with Sony is increasing.
Maybe. I mean, it wouldn't be exciting or surprising to me if they showed up. I'd be like, all right, cool, Ubisoft is here.
I'd be very excited to see The Division, personally. Very excited.
I mean, I like The Division, but a free-to-play Division worries me. You know, I don't know. Like, there's not a lot of. I don't know. I just feel like my confidence in a lot of free-to-play titles are very, very low as of late. And I feel like what we're going to be seeing, like, I wouldn't be surprised, like, Colin, dude, like, we're going to see the Division Heartland, and I wouldn't be surprised if it has that fucking cartoon art style. Like, if it doesn't, everybody looks like it would not surprise me.
The domestic terrorists are
they're like square jawed, and like everything looks like everything looks like the fucking the Incredibles. I don't know. I would believe that they would show up to an event like this, but at the same time, every time I think about things like this specifically, where it's like Ubisoft might show up with this free-to-play game, or, you know, this random third party might show up because it's a state of play and we have to temper our expectations. My brain always goes like, why even have an event like this if this is the kind of things that we have to speculate on? You know, like I want the showcases back. And this is kind of why I'm like kind of sick of like state of play. I understand people hype them up too much and they like have a lot of expectations that aren't really warranted, especially when Sony has been pretty clear about what it is. But like, my opinion as these have gone on, and as state of plays have come and gone, it continues to creep into this space of, if you don't have anything really cool to say, why do this at all? Like, what is the difference between having a state of play and just posting trailers to YouTube, or like doing a PlayStation blog post? You know what I mean? I feel sad that we can't be like, ooh, I wonder if Last of Us Remake is going to come out and it's going to like launch in November with a beta to factions.
Oh, that would be sick.
Like things like that, where it's like, oh, that's interesting and cool and fun, but we can't talk about that because there's no way that's going to be here because it's a fucking state of play.
Yeah,
it's just sad.
It is weird. Like, I feel like people voluntarily walk into the hype buzzsaw over and over again. However, I feel like when the company you love, or the company that you're into their ecosystem, has nothing to say for so long, you're like, well, it's certainly the buzzsaw is not there this time. And then you start running and the buzzsaw is there anyway. And then you do that again. You're like, well, all right, well, now's the time, right? Like, and you just are disappointed over and over again. So there's part of my heart and my mind that feels, no, there's got to be big things. Like, there's got to be bigger things to say. Like, of course, they're going to say things eventually, but then they never do.
Yeah.
And
you know they won't, but you can't help but have that feeling because your brain is like, why would they even put something on if they're not going to, you know?
Remember that this was the company at their last E3 that went for 2 hours and had 4 games.
Yeah.
So they do things a little bit differently. Now, those were 4 awesome games, but
yeah, fantastic.
I will say that it's inevitable that they'll have something to say. I just wonder if it's going to be like this massive nuclear bomb event where it's like 90 minutes of just banger, 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 date, partnership, subscription, Are they really going to ever do something like that ever again? That's kind of the other part of my heart and mind. Are they ever going to do that again? Because they might look at it and say, well, we don't really gain anything from that. First of all, and I just keep reiterating this, they're probably saying, we're selling everything we can make. What do we care about saying something right now? Like, every opportunity is an opportunity cost. So
yeah,
you have to like say like, well, let's keep the powder dry. Maybe things won't look so rosy for us in a few months, and then we'll have something to say or something to show. I don't know. So I'm so conflicted because they have been so peculiar. I used to know Sony like the back of my hand with this shit, and not anymore because they're just totally different. I think when God, I can't remember the fucking guy's name. He was this British dude. He had an interesting name. Guy Longsworth, I think was his name. He was the lead marketer of Sony for years, and I think he left. And I think when that happened, I think things might have changed with the way they position. Like, you know, a new person in there now has a different idea of how to market PlayStation as more of a really unseen brand that looms with quality, which reminds me a lot. I just keep thinking of HBO when I think of PlayStation recently, which HBO does a lot of the same shit. You might see an HBO ad here and there, but you come to them. You kind of are in and understand. So there's a lot, but I did go into the Discord and just kind of on the one-off ask what people's state of play predictions were, and some interesting answers here. So we'll just go and take some of them. Cosign says Half-Life Alyx and Final Fantasy 16 date. See that? I don't know. I don't think Final Fantasy 16 is coming this year specifically because Forspoken is coming this year. But what do you think, Dustin?
I just don't think it's state of play. That's the thing to keep in mind. It's state of play. Like they have never done they've never done anything that big at a state of play before. It would be awesome if they did that, but we got to keep the expectations in check. And Final Fantasy 16 is going to be one of the biggest games on PlayStation 5, and they know that, and they will give it the absolute biggest stage possible, much bigger than what they've set the precedent for of state of play.
You agree, Chris?
Yeah, I don't think you're going to see that. I especially don't think you're going to hear a Half-Life Alyx date.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't. That would be awesome because that really shows that they're really working hard to get a game from Valve that they really need. And as we said on the show, they haven't had a Valve game published to PlayStation since Counter-Strike on PS3. So it has been a while, and it would be nice to see them there again. I agree with you guys generally that Final Fantasy 16 is too big. However, I think that by this time next year, we will have played Final Fantasy 16. I think that Final Fantasy 16 is coming. I think it's coming maybe February, March, something like that. I feel like I don't have a great concept of time anymore. And when I think about when I think about game, like not only because of COVID and all that, but just I'm like, they just finished Final Fantasy 15. Final Fantasy 15 just came, and I'm like, no, they didn't. Final Fantasy 15 came out 7 years ago. What are you talking about? But like it didn't just come out. Of course, it's time for another Final Fantasy, and that's what I have to keep reminding myself. And it's kind of a similar thing with Dragon Quest, where I think Dragon Quest 12 might also be a 2023 game. And you say, oh, well, Dragon Quest 12 just came out. I'm like, no, it didn't. It came out in 2018. It's time for another Dragon Quest. So I don't know. I try to think about that, but I think Final Fantasy 16 will have its own thing. And what I would really love is if Square is really getting into bed with Sony with a lot of these AAA games, maybe even Final Fantasy IX Remake, I would wonder if they would do their own PlayStation-centric Square plus PlayStation event, which would be even more interesting. Not their style, but something that would be interesting nonetheless. All right. 44 All the Way says a few things, but two games that he or she mentions that we haven't brought up. One is Stray. I feel like Stray needs a date. That game has been long coming. I think people are looking forward to it. It reminds me a little bit of how Xbox fans feel about that game Tunic, which is apparently really, really good, where it's like this kind of treasure, potential treasure on your platform to play whilst you're waiting for other things to come. So I think people would be eager to get a Stray date. So I think you might be right about that. And the other one that he mentioned, and Chris, I'm curious what you think of this, is RE4 Remake. Capcom does have to announce that at some point. But again, I know that we're talking like state of play. Would they do that here? How would Capcom do that? Wouldn't they just put a trailer up? But Capcom is kind of peculiar. They don't typically do their own thing anymore. They don't release that many games anymore. They release just bigger games. So what do you think about the potential of a Resident Evil 4 remake? I mean, we are missing a Resident Evil game this year for the first time since 2016 was the last time I think a Resident Evil game wasn't released, a big AAA game.
Yeah, I mean we've had them pretty consistently.
I think
I am not convinced that we're going to see Resident Evil 4 remake just yet. I feel like something about it I know, because wasn't it originally slated for I think this year?
Well, they haven't officially all of the everything
like
is
the
like
rumors, all the rumors I think, that we were heard.
Yeah, but I think they might have switched studios at some point too. Like, but yeah, the game's not been acknowledged yet by Capcom.
Yeah.
So.
I remember a long time ago there were rumors stating that like 2022 for Resident Evil. It was that big Capcom leak. Like they were like everything was like
that's right.
Wow.
That's right.
And I can't remember how long ago that was, but like the original idea was 2022 for Resident Evil 4 remake. But that said, I think that was that pre-pandemic?
It was November of 2020. And IGN has it, and you're right. So here's what it said: there was Resident Evil Outrage, which I don't even know what that is. That was supposed to be Q4 2021. Dragon's Dogma 2, Q2 2022. Street Fighter 6, Q3 2022. Rockman Match, Q3 2022. Resident Evil 4 Remake, Q4 2022. So that's actually January to March 2023, which would be pretty close. And then there's something called Biohazard Apocalypse. And I don't know, other stuff, Street Fighter 6. Yeah, you're right. And Power Stone Remake is in that leak as well. Ooh.
Yeah.
I feel like Street Fighter sounds likely also.
Yeah, that wouldn't be surprising necessarily. Yeah. I still feel like it's a bit too early for Resident Evil 4 Remake. My hunch is that, yeah, that was information that was revealed in 2020, November. But like November 2020, that's still like in a point in the pandemic where people were like, this might end soon. Like that was like relatively early. Like I don't think even in November we anticipated 2 whole years of this thing, and I feel like that was probably pretty disruptive to the point where like it would be impressive to me if they managed to stick that Q4 2022 window, but given the fact that literally everything under the sun that has been publicly announced has been delayed, I don't imagine that many things that were privately given dates are going to stick to those dates either. You know what I mean? Like, sure. It seems to me, I would bet Resident Evil 4 Remake is probably like 2020, like 2024. Like that would be my guess, because I think there's room for Resident Evil 4 VR to breathe on PSVR. I think there's also that all these, like, what is it, Outrage and like Biohazard Apocalypse, like what these random titles in between to kind of maybe take the IP and kind of give it a little life until then. But
I can't wait.
My hunch is that it's not.
There's other good games, by the way, on there, like Final Fight Remake. I mean, that sounds awesome. But yeah, what I was going to say was Dragon's Dogma 2, specifically Q2 fiscal year 2022, which we're not quite in yet. But that game hasn't even been announced. And Street Fighter 6 with Q3, so that was holiday this year, hasn't been announced yet. So you're right. Everything's probably pushed down the list.
Yeah.
And we'll have to wait and see. But I don't know. I forgot this whole. There's so many leaks, and they're quiet about them. The Rockman leak is very exciting though too. Yeah.
The thing about Street Fighter, now that I'm thinking about it, I mean, they've already announced it, so it wouldn't be like too big of an announcement for State of Play. The last Street Fighter game Sony partnered with, they made it exclusive. Actually, I don't know whether they'll do that again. Sony owns Evo, so I'm sure they want to have a close tie to this game. Maybe this is the time we see more Street Fighter 6.
Yeah, that could be interesting. I when I talked to Vincent Janito on our fighting game episode, he made a great point, because we were talking. He feels like it's almost uncertain, or it's almost certain that it won't be exclusive. And he made the argument that that Capcom that made that decision was desperate for money. The Capcom now, not so much. So yeah, I don't know.
Like Monster Hunter money,
right? Like
yeah.
When they probably could still partner with it, though.
What'd you say? I'm sorry.
I said they probably could still have a partnership with it.
Yeah, if they want to offload marketing money and like some of the cost and defray some of the costs. Also, the Xbox fighting scene is dead, so they might just look at it and be like, "Well, we don't need to be there anyway." I mean, but I don't know. I'm not confident in that. If I were Capcom, I wouldn't do anything like that unless they were paying big bucks for me to do that. I mean, that would be my whole stance. I mean, that's my stance with my little studio. I would imagine if I was a CEO of Capcom, I wouldn't just be, willy-nilly giving shit out. All right. Let's see what else we have here. We have quite a few people writing in here. Sean Mason wrote in, and he says, what do you think about this here, Dustin? He says, Final Fantasy 16, we've talked about that already, but Final Fantasy VII Part 2 teaser with more to be revealed at Square's event in the fall. This hypothetical event, I guess, that Sean Mason is making up. So what do you make of the idea of seeing Final Fantasy VII Part 2, Remake Part 2?
Again, I'm going to lean that it's too hype for State of Play. And I think that recently we've seen Square Enix really take special care for their own events. We saw Kingdom Hearts at that Kingdom Hearts event where they revealed the next game. I don't know. I wasn't quite expecting them to do it to that extent. I thought that maybe we'd get a Kingdom Hearts tease, and they showed off like full-blown gameplay segments that will probably look nothing like that when the game actually comes out. But I would imagine, I don't know, to me it's like, why? What's the point? Just save it for that Final Fantasy event, and then imagine how exciting it will be there instead of just like a little tease. It feels like a waste.
If you had a Square Enix PlayStation event that was Final Fantasy Tactics Ogre Remake, Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2, Final Fantasy IX Remake, Final Fantasy XVI, and even something like Dragon Quest 12 as well. That would be fucking bonkers. I mean, that would be insane. That would be that would be one of the most insane Colin events of all time. You know,
that would be too much for a single. That would almost be like,
it's the 35th anniversary of Final Fantasy. That's and you have the stuff like the Final Fantasy Pixel remasters too, which maybe will be at this thing. No, you're right. You're totally right. But what I'm saying is like that's something that Bandai Namco would do with Tales, right? Like they have a Tales event every year, and in Japan, I used to get invited to go to it all the time. I'm like, I'm not going to Japan to go to a Tales event. I can't do that. I'm sorry. But but so like with the 35th anniversary and stuff, like would you come out and just be like, boom, 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 boom? I feel like, I don't know. I feel like that'd be bonkers. But again, that's like a dream state. Not a state of play. Okay.
Yeah.
That's going to be our new saying. What else do we have here? We have a few. Oh, a few people are saying Negative Xerox, amongst others, is saying, how about a Forspoken trailer? I feel like potentially, I don't care about this game.
I feel like that's most likely, though.
Yeah.
They're going to beat it dude, remember how many times we saw Deathloop over and over again? They're like, Deathloop. And we're like, stop. We don't even want to play the game anymore. We've seen it so many times. And we're at that point now where it seems obvious to not have a Forspoken trailer because we're tired of seeing it. And that's exactly when they get you. They get you with another trailer.
Yeah, you're right.
It's going to happen.
Did I just move that thing with my freaking mind?
I like that it gets more exaggerated every time.
Yeah, you sound like the Californians on SNL or
whatever. Take yourself over to Mulholland where you belong.
Stevie Walnuts has a series of really outrageous announcements. If he's right, then that would be awesome because he says God of War Ragnarok 11/11/22, SOCOM reboot, Last of Us Factions, PSVR2 spring.
You got to stand down.
I know, Stevie, you got to stand down. But he says one that I think is potential. Goodbye Volcano High re-revealed. That game did just disappear for a while.
Oh yeah,
didn't they rename it? I don't know.
That's that dinosaur dating sim, right?
Yeah, was that really weird? It was at
Furry Vibes.
Where was it? It was at, there was like that indie showcase that they did.
That game is so opposed to my taste that I would expect that we would see it.
I would
expect that I would be forced to watch it again.
That was at one of the PS5 blowouts because I remember people were like, "What the fuck? There's this dinosaur game. There's no graphics in this."
There's
I'm
no
like,
graphics
in this. I agree that I don't think the game looks very good, but like, take it easy.
There's no graphics in this. There's no it's Depression Quest.
Yeah.
I never played that game. I always defended it, but I never played it.
Yeah, me neither.
Now's the time.
Right. It's a text-based, right?
Yeah, we should do a let's play. Phil Crone says something like a Pixel Opus PSVR2 game. That would be interesting. I wouldn't be surprised if Pixel Opus was making a PSVR2 game. But again, I don't think that would be something to show here unless you have total disrespect for them as a first party. I don't know why you would do that to them.
Yeah.
Let's see. The Pixel remasters. Dustin, how are you feeling about that? If Square Enix showed up and had those ready to go. I mean, what are they doing? It's so annoying. Release those goddamn games already. What are you doing?
Yeah.
No one wants to play that on their fucking phone. God, I want to strangle some of those motherfuckers sometimes. I really do. Please.
Again, is that announcement, even maybe more so than Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2, feels appropriate for this anniversary event, right? So what is this Square Enix event? Is it a Final Fantasy anniversary celebration?
Well, what's Square Enix event?
I thought that
Is there a Square Enix event? Let me look. Summer show. No, this is 2021. I don't think there is a summer. I mean, that's what I was saying earlier is that, oh, no, everything I'm seeing is from 2021.
I think there's, well,
is it like an
Final Fantasy 35th anniversary site? Maybe it's like a celebrate, not like a showcase. I don't know.
Dude, whatever. Celebrate the release dates. Just kind of get them on PlayStation.
Yeah.
All right. You can celebrate them. That's fine. If you don't want to announce them, you can celebrate the release dates. Because I have a thing here in the Discord from that someone tweeted from Summer Game Fest. I guess it's actually from PlayStation State of Play June 2nd, Summer Game Fest and Day of the Devs on June 9th, which is going to be whatever. Netflix Geeked Week, which is games and all that. And Tribeca Game Showcase is June 10th. So that might be some indie stuff. And then June 12th is the Xbox and Bethesda Game Showcase, which we're going to do a whole episode of Sacred Symbols Plus on for sure. I'm very intrigued by what they have to say. And The final one that I want to bring to your attention, and Chris, I'll go to you with this one first. This is a realistic one, I think, actually, and I don't know why I didn't think of this. What if Take-Two shows up, as Poot says, with BioShock? I mean, it exists. We're the ones who told everyone about it.
Yeah,
it's kind of. I don't know the timeline on this. As I understand it, it was rebooted like during development, and the last BioShock game came out in 2013. So clearly, any time can be the right time at this point. So I don't want to judge it based on that, but that could be. And but that is such a big game. Like I don't.
Yeah, Colin. You there you go. You just said, like, BioShock being unveiled at a State of Play would almost feel insulting to BioShock, you know?
But what
I almost feel like they don't, like, they're already, look, you're already taking the reins of an incredible IP from a studio that no longer exists. You're building it from scratch yourself. I know people are, curious about it and they're excited about it, but I also know that a lot of people are pretty skeptical of it. BioShock is a very difficult thing to deal in, and it's hard to imagine a BioShock that has nothing to do with Ken Levine, or a BioShock that isn't in some way guided by him. And I feel like the last thing that they would want to do is unveil it at something like this, which, that doesn't sound nice, but at the same time, it's like they need all the goodwill that they can get coming into this, especially because it's been so long since the last game, and it's also, again, like you said, been rebooted in the middle of development, which is never a great sign. It's usually like, I mean, it could work out. Like sometimes things get rebooted and they work out just fine, but like generally speaking, that is indicative of a pretty messy development cycle, which typically just does not end well for the final product. And you just got to get as much goodwill on your side as possible. And I don't know if having BioShock unveiled at a State of Play would be the move for them, especially because Take-Two has a ton of money.
Yeah. Definitely. If I were them, I would Take-Two's in a position where they can start doing their own showcases again too, because I mean they can center an entire showcase around Grand Theft Auto 6 when they're ready to go.
Oh yeah, totally.
Very similar to what Bethesda did with Fallout 4 in 2015. I'm wondering, because guys, the pessimism between the three of us is so gravitationally like it would. It's got the gravity of like a dying star, right? No doubt,
dude. It's informed by every State of Play that we've ever seen.
That's true, but what I was wondering is it? What if we're wrong? Right? Like I don't see in my mind. I'm like I think it's safe to assume that there's nothing from the first or second party there at all. Maybe on PSVR, maybe they show Horizon or something. I don't think they would do that, but the third party stuff, I'm like, I really don't know if it could be like a meteoric crazy thing. I don't think so, but I'm just wondering. That's all.
The thing is, like, have we ever had a meteoric third party offering from State of Play?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, well, there you go. Like it would be, believe me, dude, it'd be so nice to be like, you know what? Maybe Bungie shows up and they do a little tease.
Yeah. And they announced that they bought PlayStation.
Yeah, they bought Bungie buys PlayStation. That is so cosmically insane.
By the way,
I don't know, man.
You'll appreciate this, Chris. Someone tweeted at me and says, "Was catching up on my backlog of Last Day Media content when I came across a No Taxation Was Right moment in Sacred Symbols Plus Episode 3 from August of 2019. Colin said, what if Sony bought Bungie and kept them multi-platform and let them do whatever they wanted?"
So that's crazy.
So some of the random things we apparently say, I got to go dig that out. That's hysterical.
That's insane.
Yeah. So I don't know. I say so many random things. A broken clock that doesn't even remotely explain it at this point.
You're like a clock that like speeds up at random intervals in the day. And
then. All right. Well, we're going to see what happens now. Again, to remind everyone, the State of Play is on Thursday, June 2nd. And it's the afternoon or evening, depending on where you are in the US. For you in Europe, it's going to be much later. I want to, what we'll do, guys, and I'll just tell everyone, is we'll just record a normal episode and then we'll obviously re-record a pickup to put in the show for the State of Play itself when it happens. And that will determine. I mean, it could be a 20-minute or a 15-minute sliver. It could be half the show. I really have no idea.
Yeah. We could have a 7-hour Sacred Symbols on our hands.
We went 5 hours once, right? Didn't we
I'm
go
trying to
5
remember.
hours one time? Like when the last time they actually said anything? I'm looking here on the...
Yeah, I'm trying to check on YouTube because I know it was during the summer.
Was it? It was over the summer.
We hit 5 hours?
I felt like we did once, but it was because we recorded 2 shows and put them together. Am I crazy? I feel like that did happen, but maybe it didn't.
No, I know what you're talking about. I just don't know if it was a full 5.
Yeah,
I think that might have been back when 4 was like 4.5.
Yeah.
4.5, I think we probably did.
And
I think that was back when we thought that was crazy.
I got to be honest with you though. Like I feel like the time kind of flies. Like I don't feel like I'm sitting here for 4 hours. I don't know. Maybe it's me. I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy.
It was 4 hours, 48 minutes. And it was which episode is this?
What number?
154.
154.
All's Not Quiet on June 14th.
Oh yeah, there it is. It's E3, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe
it would be an E3 episode.
Yeah, so maybe we'll hit that one. I don't think it's going to be this one, but that's the fun thing is that they've said so little and we have said so much on this show that imagine when they actually have something to say. Remember, one of the biggest Sacred Symbols bumps we ever had with traffic and Patreon support was when Activision was purchased by Microsoft. So imagine if something happened on our end, what it's going to be like for us. So it's exciting. All right. Well, boys, I appreciate your time. I know this was impromptu, so thank you for carving out time in your schedule to record this with me. And thank you all out there for your love, kindness, and support of all things Sacred Symbols and Last Stand Media. We could not do without you. Hope you're excited about the showcase. Let us know what you think the showcase will be all about. I think tempering our expectations. I think Chris is right. He's a student of the past. He's a student of history. It's better to be surprised. What do they call that? What is it called when you Black Swan event? Have you ever heard that term? A Black Swan event?
No.
It's like an event so insane, like typically a political event or an economic event that it cannot be predicted. Like the whole fundamental thing is like something happens that literally you could have never predicted. And I think they call that the Black Swan event. And so maybe we'll have our own Black Swan event. Maybe I'll even call the episode that. When it happens one day. Yeah, here it is. Black Swan theory is a metaphor that describes an event that comes as a surprise, has a major effect, and is often inappropriately rationalized after the fact with the benefit of hindsight. So it would be us ending, it would be Final Fantasy 16 being announced for this fall at this top of the state of play. And then us saying like, yeah, of course. I mean, that's pretty much what we expected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Colin, I got to make one revision because I just realized this and the comments will point this out. I think the obvious place for the God of War release date is Keeley's event at this point.
Oh, I mean, I was surprised you came out. You know, you were the one that said that at the top, right?
Well, I just wanted to bring it up because I feel like that's what's on everyone's minds. And I wanted to get the temperature in the room about yes or no. Because Sony's... I think that makes sense because they did a Horizon trailer at the Game Awards, which it wasn't anything new, but it shows that Sony's willing to play ball with Keeley. A lot of eyes on this event with it being minimal E3 stuff this year. It makes sense to put it there.
Yeah, you're probably right. You want to keep your relationships good. If you're Sony, you might as well keep your relationship good with Jeff Keighley. Give him something. Throw him a bone. Oh. All right. Well, that's all there is for this episode of Sacred Symbols Plus. We'll see you next time for more. Until then, goodbye.
See ya.
Take care, guys.
Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is a product and trademark of Last Stand Media and Colin's Last Stand LLC, and is proudly recorded in the USA. The show was conceived by, is written by, and is directed by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-hosts are Chris Raygun Maldonado and Dustin Furman. The show is produced by executive producer Dustin Furman. It's edited by associate producer Ben Smith. All of Last Stand's theme music is by my best friend, Ramon Narvaez. As you know, all of Last Stand shows, including Sacred Symbols, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer level on Patreon, our highest tier, and we're grateful for your thoughtful and kind contributions to our independent endeavor. Thank you.